saving their money and investing it in their little business and then hiring people and growing. It's what makes America the economic powerhouse we are. I was just... I just sat with a few folks from right around here. Someone making amplifiers for entertainers. Someone else who's got a landscaping business. Another person who's in teaching. Another individual who's in the bakery business, talking about their businesses and the risks they've taken. All of them said that things are tough right now. That under the Obama economy, it's been harder, and particularly with high gasoline prices. These gasoline prices are really crushing a lot of people because folks have long distances to get to work. A small business oftentimes uses a lot of energy. In the bakery business, you're heating things up, that uses energy. You're delivering things with trucks, that uses energy. If you're in the landscape business, your equipment uses energy and your trucks use energy to get to the homes where you're mowing the lawns. And so people are really struggling. And at a time like this, the president's looking around for someone to blame. You know, it seems to be part of his nature. He's out of ideas. He's out of excuses. And in 2012, we're going to get him out of office. That's going to get done. But he said something that, I think it was yesterday, he said, the reason we have high gasoline prices is, and then he was seeking around. What could it be? What could it be? Now, I have some suggestions for him. Maybe it's related to the fact that you stopped drilling in the Gulf. Maybe it's related to the fact, Mr. President, that you were not drilling in Anwar. Maybe it's related to the fact that you said we couldn't get a pipeline in from Canada known as Keystone. Those things affect gasoline prices long term. But instead he came up with this. He said it's because Republican presidential candidates are talking in a very muscular way about Iran and their nuclear program. Now, that's a pretty tough one to follow, all right? And frankly, it's disappointing to have the President of the United States take a serious foreign policy issue, which is Iran, the state sponsor of terror in the world, becoming nuclear, and trying to turn that into saying we're somehow responsible for high gasoline prices in this country. It's a real stretch, even for a guy who's gotten pretty good at making excuses. I wish, as a president, he would finally take responsibility. Take responsibility for 24 million people out of work or underemployed in this country. Take responsibility for not having drilled for more oil when he could have. Take responsibility for home values having gone down, down, down. And take responsibility for the national debt having, well, he's almost doubled the amount of our public national debt. By the end of his only 4 years, by the end of his first 4 years, he will have put in place almost as much public debt as all the prior presidents combined. It's time for this president to be held responsible, and because of that responsibility, he's going to be out of office this coming fall. Now, there's a big difference in the course that I would take compared to the course he would take for our country. I hope you recognize what's at stake in this election. This is a, I say this frequently, this is a battle for the soul of America. I think this president wants to turn us into something we wouldn't recognize, a European-style nation with an economy like theirs, with high unemployment and low wage growth, and a military that gets shrunk down to almost nothing. That's what Europe has done. Europe doesn't work in Europe. We're sure as heck not going to import it here. The right course is not to make America more like Europe. The right course is to restore the principles that made America the greatest nation on earth. And so when it comes to energy, instead of saying, okay, we're not going to drill in the Gulf, or we're not going to drill in Anwar, we're not going to drill in the Outer Continental Shelf, and we're not going to have that pipeline from Canada, the right course instead is to say, we're going to take every action to open up American energy, coal, oil, gas, nuclear, renewables. We're going to open up those sources and finally get energy secure in this country. There's another difference in our course. This president seems to be comfortable with trillion-dollar deficits. It's inconceivable to me that we would pass on to our children and to their children our debts, crippling debts. Ultimately, the interest is going to be paid on that year after year after year. Our kids and their kids. How can we explain that to them? Particularly given the fact that we were given the greatest nation on earth, bought by blood from the greatest generation. How do we look at our kids and say, we passed on these trillions to you? We will not do it if I'm president. We will cut federal spending and finally balance our budget. Woo! You know, the president's view of our economy is an unusual one. He talks about trying to create green jobs. I think that means he wants to give your green to people who helped his campaign. I mean, he gives money to Fisker and to Tesla. Those are electric car companies, just that we needed. You know, electric sport car companies funded by the government. And then Enter One, which is a battery company, gone bankrupt. Solyndra, of course, another one of these. I hope you understand that that kind of investment philosophy is not natural in this nation. It's not free enterprise. Free enterprise is letting people, consumers, markets decide which products they want and let them buy those things. I'm going to get rid of that kind of crony capitalism and return America to free enterprise and American consumer choice and freedom. There are other places we see things differently. He fundamentally believes that government bureaucrats can do a better job telling you what kind of health insurance you ought to have, what kind of coverage you ought to have, what kinds of provisions should be in your health care treatment. It could do a better job, for instance, telling the Catholic Church what they have to do for their employees. It wants to tell the Catholic Church to violate their own conscience and to provide contraceptives and morning after pills and sterilization to their employees. This is a president who has a view of health care which is that government knows better than people. My view is on day one, we stop Obamacare in its tracks and get rid of it permanently. There's one more thing let me mention, and that is a difference with regards to our military. The president announced about $500 billion in cuts to our military, and there's about another $500 billion to go. And his own Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, said this was a doomsday scenario, and yet that's how he's proceeding. And let me tell you something about the state of our military. I see a man here with a Navy hat on. How are you? Pardon? Your son's in Afghanistan. Thank you for his service. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Do you know that our Navy is smaller now than any time since 1917? And it's on track to get smaller and smaller under the president's plans. And our Air Force is older and smaller than any time since it was founded in 1947. And our number of troops, I mean, you know how many times we saw men and women having to be rotated back through Afghanistan and Iraq. They're stretched to the breaking point in those conflicts. And yet this president's plan is to reduce our purchases of ships, to reduce our purchases of aircraft. And by the way, we build the ships here and we build the aircraft here. To reduce the number of personnel or active duty personnel. That's his course. My course is very different. I believe that we must increase our number of ships, that we should increase our number of aircraft, we should increase our number of active duty personnel by 100,000 and make sure we give our veterans the care they deserve.
Woo! Bring our troops home! Bring our troops home!
I don't just want to have a strong military so that we can win wars, as important as that is. I want to also have a strong military such that no one else in the world would ever think of challenging America. We must have military superiority to protect peace and prevent war. And so this is a campaign about a vision for America. Whether we're going to have a president who cares about politics and power and becoming more and more like Europe with larger and larger bureaucracies of people telling us how to live our lives, or whether we're going to instead return to the principles of freedom and opportunity that have always made us the hope of the earth. I mean, this nation began with an extraordinary premise by the founders of our land. It's so second nature to us that we sometimes don't stop and recognize just how extraordinary and brilliant were the views of the founders. Perhaps their brilliance combined with inspiration led to a document that said that We were not given our rights by the king or by